The next bit of Life in Modern Britain is looking at how everyday people can make an impact on the world around them, how they can be active citizens. And one way that they can do that is to be part of an NGO. So if you think, if there's a disaster going on in the world, if there's been a natural disaster or war or something like that, we know that organisations like the UN might go in, but also there's other groups, and a lot of these tend to be NGOs. So NGOs are non-governmental organisations. It literally means that they are not linked to the government. So governments don't run them, can't tell them what to do. However, NGOs can help the government. Very often NGOs are charities or global pressure groups, something like WWF that looks after wildlife. So not only are they a charity and help out wildlife, but they also do apply pressure to certain places and people and try and get animals treated better. So Action Aid is another one as well. Again, kind of a mixture between a charity and a pressure group. And they will go in and they will try and help out where there are disasters, where there's poverty, where people are suffering, and try and persuade governments and businesses to treat people better. The next level down is pressure groups. So NGOs kind of work on an international level mostly. Pressure groups tend to be more national. However, there are international pressure groups as well. So we know that they can influence global issues too. So if you remember, a pressure group could be like Amnesty International, or who fight for human rights, or Greenpeace that fight for the environment. And these both are NGOs as well. Individual action is the next layer down, and that's when one person makes a change within the world. So it could be somebody like Rebecca Hoskins. She is an animal filmmaker, makes films about animals, and she was in her local area and she noticed how many plastic bags were clogging up the streets. She went to all of the local shops in her village and said, you know, for a trial period, can you not give out plastic bags? Can you allow people to bring their own bags in or to sell them, just to try and reduce the wastage? Anyway, this got taken up by the media, got spread, and then that whole campaign spread to the whole of the UK, and that's now why there is a law on plastic bags, which means shops can't give them us, and why we pay for them, but also the reduce in use of them has been absolutely extraordinary. Which is brilliant for saving on pollution and the environment, and that came from one woman doing that. It wasn't the government that suddenly thought of it. Okay, so if we are campaigning, there are different factors that are going to help our campaign. For example, if you think finance, if your group, your pressure group, your NGO has got a good flow of money, they can pay for campaign materials. They can pay to have people working for them full time rather than people just doing it in their spare time. That's why with a lot of pressure groups and NGOs, members pay a nominal fee every month, so a couple of pounds, just to keep it going. Membership, how many people does it actually involve? A large pressure group is going to have much more success than a smaller one, so numbers count. The role of the media, if the media is on your side or interested in you, then you are going to go far further than if they're not. For example, if you're holding a protest but there's only a few of you there and the media aren't concerned, they don't take any photos, they don't film it, then you're not going to get very far. But like with Rebecca Hoskins, if the media do take charge of it, then you are going to spread, it is going to spread, and your campaign is more likely to be successful. Nature of the cause, anything to do with children and animals tends to go quite well. So it's got to be something people care about. For example, Jamie Oliver and his campaign for school dinners to be of better quality and more healthy was successful because it was about the health of children. The student fees campaign is less successful, and maybe that's because a lot of people don't really care about students and just think get out and get a job and blah 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 blah. Okay, and then methods used. You're going to need to use direct methods at some point if you want to get more media exposure. However, if you start breaking the law, the media are going to turn on you. So there's a big kind of like divide between which methods are best, direct or indirect, and to what extent. Do some research on Greta Thunberg. She's a really, really good example of somebody who has performed individual action. So when she started, I think she was about 14, 15, and she started campaigning in her home country of Sweden for the environment, and she's led a series of school strikes all across the world for people to campaign for the environment, and she says she won't stop until every country signs up to the Paris Agreement, which is to cut carbon emissions and therefore helping the environment. You might also have heard over the summer of 2020, Marcus Rashford, who plays for Man United in the Premier League, he campaigned for school dinners vouchers to be given out over the 6 weeks holidays for free school meal pupils. He argued that over lockdown, a lot of children will have suffered, particularly those ones who grew up in poverty. He sent a letter to the Prime Minister about his experiences of growing up in poverty, how hard it was, how no matter what his mum done, they still really struggled, and he said he didn't want to see anybody else in the same way. So his campaign got lots and lots of support from the media. It launched a huge petition, and in the end he was successful. So that's another example of individual action. Again, factors that could be included: media coverage. He's also got the nature of the cause people are going to care about, and also the fact that he's a celebrity. If you can have a celebrity on your campaign, you are going to succeed a lot more likely than if not. So back to NGOs then, non-governmental organisations. They're non-profit voluntary citizens groups, so it's a way that everybody can join in who are trying to make a change. They provide humanitarian services to help out in difficult situations like fleeing from conflict or a civil war or natural disasters. And if you look at the side, there's a list of NGOs, and I think you've probably heard of a few of those. So Doctors Without Borders are a good example. They deliver medical assistance from doctors and health workers in populations of distress. Oxfam, you've probably seen the shops for. So they raise money for poverty relief, and also they launch a lot of programs to try and help countries in places where their help is needed to be able to prosper themselves. NGOs are usually trusted by the recipient governments, so the government welcome their help. They are not politically biased, usually, and they will remain impartial. NGOs also appeal to the public for additional funding, so that might be in some of the TV adverts you've seen, like for WaterAid and things like that. So what you need to do, make yourself a chart with NGOs, pressure groups and individual action. Try and come up with a couple of examples in each one. So if we look at the recent protests that have happened over 2020 when it comes to Black Lives Matter protests. So in America on the 25th of May, an African American man called George Floyd was killed by the police. A white police officer knelt on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. During this time, George Floyd was asking for his mom, who was already dead, and telling the officer repeatedly that he couldn't breathe. He was arrested, well, wasn't even arrested. The police had come out for a really minor reason. It wasn't a big crime. He never got his chance to go to court and prove his innocence or to be found guilty. He was ultimately killed by the police. This launched many protests across the USA, which then spread to the UK and other countries across the world. So lots and lots of arguments, particularly in America, over the treatment of black people, especially at the hands of the police. They're not saying all police are racist, however there is a disproportionate number of black people who have been killed by white police officers. Huge long-standing issues with racism across the USA, stemming from the days of slavery, and this kind of was the last straw that's seen the biggest protests since probably the 1960s. There's also lots of criticisms about the way the government responded. They used rubber bullets and tear gas, and most of the protesters were peaceful. So what does it affect the UK? Racism is still a massive part of our society in the UK. Lots of people joined in by taking part in Blackout Tuesday, where they put a black square in their social media to represent Black Lives Matter and to raise awareness. There are issues with racism, systemic institutional racism, from the NHS, through healthcare, through the schooling system, through jobs, income and the criminal justice system, that prove that people of Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups are less likely to receive the same treatment as white people, and their life chances are reduced. So Black Lives Matter is a peaceful movement. It's not really a pressure group, it's more than that. It's a movement, and it tries just to raise awareness about the inequalities that exist. Some people argue all lives matter or Black Lives Matter. By doing that, you are silencing the struggle that Black people have faced. We know all lives matter. We don't need to hear all of that. It's Black people who are suffering at the moment in this circumstance, and they're the ones who need our help. So direct action was used. Direct doesn't always mean illegal or violent, but it is the mass protests. Why do you think that that direct action was used in this instance? What are the benefits of it? What are the problems? And do you think it would have had such an impact if it was indirect methods? Right, so you've got some questions that you can complete now, and these are representative of GCSE questions.